Hi everyone, so welcome back to Clayton's Imaginarium for another film review. This time we're looking at a film that was released, or a sports biographical film that was released in 2023 called The Iron Claw. This film depicts the events, or the tragic events, of the Von Erich family, a family of wrestlers who are very popular in the Texas wrestling scene, and it depicts events from 1979 to the 1990s. This film's directed by Sean Durkin, and it stars Zac Efron and Jeremy Allen White, among a vast cast of other actors of, high caliber. And so, this is a very well put together film in the sense of fitting the events, or because there's quite a few events, and you know if anyone knows of the Von Erich family and is very much into wrestling as I am, it's one of the most tragic stories in wrestling history. And so it's very difficult to make a film that you're essentially depicting a downfall of a family, and a series of tragic events, one after the other, but also trying to give, I guess, a sense of hope at the end of it, or leave an audience with a sense of hope. And I think this film does achieve that. The performances, the way that people look in this film as well. I mean, Zac Efron, really got shredded up for this, and he looks fantastic in this. He looks the part. And but yeah, it's a story that starts with Fritz von Erich, their father, and also world class championship wrestling, and essentially his his sons struggling to find the same level or exceed the level of success as their father. And there's definitely I guess lessons to be learnt from this tale and the events depicted in this film about how fame and that level of, I guess, grooming his sons to for success, but almost pushing them to a limit where it's costing not only their lives, but essentially the downfall of the family. And I think there's some real sort of life lessons that kind of are very much put across in this film, for for other people to learn from, I guess, in some respects. But like I say, it also is able to give that sense of hope as well. So I just think, if it's strange because you kind of watch this film and you see all these events unfold, but then at the end of it, you're kind of left with this sense of kind of hope, and you're like, oh, okay, actually, despite all this, there's still some element of good that's come out of it in some strange way, I guess. But yeah, overall, this is for any wrestling fan, well, even if you're not a wrestling fan, this film is very digestible, very easy to watch, and I feel like there's a lot of people who can relate to this in general. You don't have to be a wrestling fan, but for a wrestling fan, we're very much familiar with this story. I mean, the film does depict certain events out of, I guess, chronological order in some respects. They've kind of moved some events around in the timeline to fit the narrative of the film better. And I do think the film doesn't quite depict the real height of their popularity. I mean, it gives you a sense of it, but I don't, if you're not a wrestling fan and you maybe don't know of this story, the Von Erichs were exceedingly popular. they were just huge megastars, and I think sometimes the film doesn't quite reach that level of getting that across. I think they it does as well as it can, I guess, for the budget that it has. There are going to be budget limitations there, but I do feel like it doesn't quite get there, but it does at least give you some idea of that. If I'm going to nitpick, right? I also think the depiction of Ric Flair is really, really bad in this film. Luckily, it's only a very small aspect of the film, but it is honestly like, for a film with this level of talent in, I was quite surprised that they even included that in the film. Like, if it was me, I would have reshot it, to be honest with you. I just feel like as a director, I would have been like, this just isn't working. And it comes across as like really kind of bad cosplay, I guess. Like someone pretty much just badly imitating, Ric Flair, basically. And so, yeah, that's definitely one of the negative aspects in this film that I just thought like that either should have been reshot or just cut out completely, because it really kind of it's bad, especially more so, if your demographic for this film, or your kind of target audience, is not only a general audience, but you for a fact wrestling fans are going to watch this film, that for me, like, you should be on top of that. Like, you should be removing that, or at least reshooting it with an actor who can actually do a very good a depiction of Ric Flair. So so that's definitely one of the negative aspects that I just had to laugh at in this film, which is not good. But apart from a few nitpicks here and there, like, overall this film is very well done, and considering the subject matter, and I think it's it's just it really is a tragic story, but it's real life, and I think that gives it that more of an emotional punch to it, especially more so if you are someone who's not familiar with the story. But even if you are, it's like I say, it's still gonna, everyone will be able to relate to it in some way, right? The majority of audience has experienced loss in some way, right? So it's kind of, it's something that people can relate to. But look, if I had to rate this film, I would say it's a 3.5 out of 5. I feel like it doesn't quite, like I say, there's certain nitpicks I have with the film that don't quite, it doesn't quite depict certain things, in the way it should be, like the height of their popularity. Certain events happen in different order, and also I think there's also certain members of the family who aren't even included in the film, but if they were, it would probably make for a longer film, and maybe there's some budgetary constraints there again. So yeah, there's certain little nitpicks, and this is coming from a wrestling fan, right? So I'm watching this from not only an audience perspective, but as a wrestling fan, being familiar with this story. So I think, with those nitpicks, I think a 3.5 out of 5, definitely above, it's definitely above average for a film, and it's definitely worth your time to watch. But, who knows? I think depending on what type of audience, I guess, is watching this, will either rate it higher or lower. I think it's that sort of film, but I do think this overall is a really good film, and I think it's definitely worth for any audience and to watch it. I think everybody can relate to a story like this, and the lessons that can be learnt from the events of this of this film. So yeah, that's another review. If you like this review, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. It'd be great to have you as part of this community. Looking at older films, newer films. At some point, we're going to have some other types of content, maybe even some video game reviews. But we're still setting things up. But yeah, if you enjoy this channel, if you want to be a part of this nice, you know, community, hit that subscribe button. It greatly helps the channel, and yeah, it'd be great to grow this channel and to keep pumping out some reviews and videos and different content. So yeah, so until the next one, bye guys.